Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Thanks to everybody for taking part today. My name is Brad Grimes. I'll be moderating today's webinar, Combining the Digital with the Physical to Create Tomorrow's Campus. Before I set the stage, I'd like to thank today's panelists, Craig Park from the Sexton Group, Emmett Frank from Dartmouth, and Aidan Sizemore from Florida State's College of Business, for taking the time to share their insights with us on the subject of using digital audiovisual solutions in higher education. Again, my name is Brad Grimes. I'm with AVIXA, the Audiovisual and Integrated Experience Association. Even if you have not heard of us, you've heard of our members. We represent manufacturers, designers, and integrators of audiovisual technology solutions. Your campuses have a lot of their systems installed, the projectors, sound systems, microphones, video displays, electronic whiteboards. We also represent the technology companies that design and build those systems into your campus facilities. These are AV contractors who come in, listen to your vision for incorporating technology into your learning spaces, design solutions that meet your goals. Craig Park, who you'll hear from in a minute, worked for one of the preeminent AV consultancies serving higher education as well as a slew of other markets. I don't want to oversimplify what firms like his does, but if your school is looking to build a new media commons or a large active learning lecture hall, and it needs video, sound reinforcement, other technology, AVIXA members like the Sexton Group come in and design the technology into the space so that it complements the content and the learning that goes on in there, such that everybody can see and hear what's taking place, so they have a great learning or teaching experience, and so they can access and control the technology easily. Really quickly about AVIXA itself, one of the most visible things we do is run technology trade shows and conferences around the world, most under the name InfoComm. In fact, next week in Orlando, Florida, we will be holding our big North American InfoComm with about 44,000 registrants, 950 exhibitors. For years, it has been very focused on professionals and companies specifically in the AV channel, but more recently, we've welcomed thousands of people and organizations actually shopping for or seeking to understand better new applications of AV technology for themselves. And if I had to name one group that comes to InfoComm in far greater numbers than others, it would be technologists and facility planners from higher education. In addition to trade shows, AVIXA is very much a professional organization. We offer vetted, standardized, ANSI-approved industry certifications. Actually, many who operate the medium systems on your campuses hold CTS certifications for operating, designing, or installing audiovisual solutions. And we oversee publication of ANSI-approved AV technology standards. AV designers, integrators, and users can employ these types of standards when they build an AV solution so that they get the results they're seeking. We're looking at just a few examples here. From left to right, you have standards that ensure audio in a space, like an auditorium, is clearly hearable, whether you sit in the front row or the back corner. A standard that ensures everyone is ensures whatever's shown, I guess, for example, on a screen at the front of a lecture hall maybe, can be read or seen by everyone in the space. And another standard there that makes sure that displayed content is, clearly legible. For example, in a beautiful new space, nice atrium with abundant daylight. Technology, certified professionals, industry standards, these are some of the elements required to create a true audiovisual experience. It's not just technology for technology's sake, but technology optimized for the space and the situation. Lecture, distance learning, visualization, communication, collaboration, heck, even entertainment, because we believe the right combination of content, space, and technology creates an experience that improves outcomes. Here at AVIXA, we've been taking that message into a lot of different markets. Some are just realizing how AV can be a strategic asset. Others are awakening to new ways that sound, lights, visual effects can enhance their respective experiences. And we're really excited to talk today about ways AV and digital experiences can benefit higher education. In a couple of weeks, we'll be in London at EdTech X Europe, meeting people and presenting other examples. We're also attending the Society for College and University Planning's SCUP annual conference in Seattle next month. As we move ahead from today, if you've got any questions about AVIXA or members or topics related to executing on a digital AV solution, I look forward to hearing from you. I think when we get to the last slide today, I've left my email address there. AVIXA really sees what we're doing as bringing groups together, all of you in higher ed, seeking new ways to create better learning experiences through technology, and professionals in our industry who have the expertise and solutions to help. Finally, before I get out of the way here and leave it to our panelists about today's webinar, each of our guest panelists will discuss a project or projects they've been involved with using AV and digital technologies. When we get to the end, we'll have a little Q&A. You should see on your screen a place where you can pose a question to our panelists. If you want to learn more, post your question there, and I'll try to get to as many of them as we can before the end of our hour. If we can't, I'll work with my team here at AVIXA to create some content that addresses some of the most pressing questions. AVIXA has a new place in its website with reports and stories about AV solutions in higher education. You can find it at www.avixa.org/higheredav. That address will also be on the slide at the end. So there we have it. So to get us started, I would like to turn over the mic and virtual clicker to Craig Park of the Sexton Group to introduce himself and walk you through some of the company's work. Craig?
Thanks, Brad. This is Craig Park. I'm a principal with the Sexton Group. We're a national independent technology consultancy, as Brad mentioned, with offices across the country. I am the managing principal of our Omaha Midwest office and serve clients throughout the region from Minnesota down to Louisiana and Texas. So, today, I'd like to talk about a couple of things. Oops, sorry, my slides. Our trends in higher education that we see. We work on hundreds of higher ed projects in any given year, and over the last decade, we've seen a real shift as active learning has become a model accepted by many institutions as a new pedagogical approach to teaching. That has had a significant impact on the design of space and the design of technology supporting that space. In all cases, though, we really understand that there are a number of learning configurations, both the way people learn and the way people teach. And so we want to look at technology as a supporting function. Brad mentioned it's not just technology for technology's sake. In our case, it's technology for supporting improved learning outcomes. And now, just in the last few years, we've seen a real move towards leveraging IT infrastructure and AV over IP as a methodology to simplify operations, improve quality of service, and provide a better technology experience for campuses that we work with. I'm going to share a couple of case studies today. The first, the University of Missouri, Kansas City Block School of Management. A few years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago now, they opened their new Henry W. Block Executive Hall for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, quite a mouthful. But it aspired to be a new center for teaching and learning business education on the campus. The second one will be a project we completed a couple of years ago at University of Texas Southwestern in the med school, which is their first foray into team-based learning. So I'll share the stories about those projects. At the Block Executive Hall, it was a new building on campus adjacent to the existing Block School of Management. It was designed by BNIM Architects out of Kansas City in association with Moore Rubel Udell Architects out of Santa Monica, California. The MEP engineers were Branch Pattern out of Kansas City. The general contractor was J.E. Dunn. The Sexton Group provided AV, IT, and acoustic design, and our AV contractor integrator was SKC out of Kansas City. When we first worked on the project in the beginning, I was in a strategic planning meeting with faculty and the dean and the architects, and we're talking about the kinds of facilities we should tour. And I asked Dean Tenki Tang, was there another business school that he admired that we should go see? And he said, I don't want to be another business school. I want to be the D school like Stanford. And if you're not familiar with the D school, the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design, or better known as the D school, it's an interdisciplinary, interprofessional certification program that spans all of the departments and schools within the Stanford campus and provides a facility for professionals and students and faculty to get together and plan and develop new ideas. It's based around concepts that IDEO, the product design company out of Silicon Valley, they were the founders, Michael and David Kelly of the D School, and it follows their model of interdisciplinary, interprofessional interactions as a way to foster better kinds of facilities. This is a shot of the atrium. The building has a big, large, 3-story atrium space. You can see the stairwell here acts as a seating area. There's a large multi-screen video wall that has content developed inside the school on a regular basis shown to people as they follow through, and it's a circulation path on campus between the student union and the library, so it's a very active space, and you see a lot of people in the building all the time. Very popular. Here's another view of that. Happened to be the day of the opening. If you look down closely, just below the teaching wall words in the little red sign, there's a guy with a brown hat. That's Dean Tan as he was standing there at the opening. One of the things that came out of the programming effort of the project was the original concept program showed 3 200-seat lecture halls. And as we worked through the program, it turned out that they really only needed one. What they really needed was more small huddle spaces. So we gave up the square footage for 2 lecture halls to create 30 what are 6-person team spaces known as venture accelerators in a business school model. But here you can see the one auditorium we did build. It's a double tiered, so each of the tiers of the raised of the steps of the auditorium have 2 rows of tables. That way, all the students can turn around and face the students behind them and create team interactions. And that was part of the plan. The dean was really wanted to foster active learning or team-based learning as the primary pedagogical approach in the school. And you can see the very large projection canvas. There's 3 projectors that provide imagery across this entire campus above the whiteboard. The faculty insisted that they needed whiteboards, even though we pointed out it's going to be really difficult to see that writing at the back of the room, but we maintain that tradition. There are a lot more of these more traditional business school U-shaped case method rooms. There's 3 or 4, I think 4 of these in the building. They are also double tiered, but you can see the screens around the perimeter. These are all connected through a wireless collaboration point, so the students can log into a screen from their seats. They can turn around and face them, develop solutions, and then share them back with a professor in the audience at the front of the room. There are a lot of these large flat floor spaces, mobile carts with flat screens and whiteboards. You can see the whiteboard on the back on the one on the right. And the tables and furniture are all steel case, and they're able to move those and reconfigure those depending on the cohort size of the student group in any particular teaching model. There's another view of a similar room on another floor. Divides into 3, and so opens up into a large group space, but it has a front of house, but also has a lot of side small teaching walls on these little portable screens that move around. And the innovation lab, for some reason, let me see if we can get that to come back. There it is. Has very little technology in it. It was basically whiteboard space. It does have a screen and a projector, but it's primarily for group collaboration and whiteboarding ideas. So they did look at some non-tech spaces as part of the program as well. The upstairs seminar rooms are flexible again, and they can be configured as you see here in the U shape on the right, or they can be broken up into team space, again with portable screens and whiteboards around the room. So this has become a fairly typical model, and we're seeing more and more of this in other buildings we're working on across campus. So this is one of the precursors of this style of flexible space design. Here's one of the venture accelerators, small space, built-in screen, wireless collaboration, plus wired connection as well. And these rooms are booked 24/7 by teams developing new ideas as part of their business school model. I happened to run into one of the faculty at a conference a few months ago, and this was the quote he gave me. He said, "We love the building, and he loves teaching in it because of the flexibility. The technology is easy to use, And what I thought was very funny was that the other faculty on campus are jealous of those who get to teach. It is a great building. I would say that's the consensus talk we've heard throughout the building. So now the second one I want to talk about was the UT Southwestern Med Center in Dallas. 4 years ago, they started a process of converting their traditional didactic pedagogical model to one of active learning. This is an image of their lecture hall, the old lecture hall where the second and third year clerkships in the med school would take these classes with a professor at the front, the sage on the stage in the traditional model. And they realized that for them to be relevant in the 21st century as a med school, they needed to rethink education. So they put a committee together and started looking at active learning as a model they wanted to explore. And after 2 years of developing new curriculum, they hired HDR architects and the Sextant Group to work with them to develop a beta test room, which I'll show you in a second. The architects, as I mentioned, were HDR Architecture out of Dallas. The general contractor was Lemco Construction. We provided the AV/IT and acoustic design, and the AV/IT contractor was Landtech Communication out of Dallas. The room is a conversion of an old unused part of their library. It's a part of the third floor. And it was created, you can see these horizontal lines are demising walls using skywall technology, which is a product where a operable wall folds up into the ceiling as opposed to sliding into a wall pocket. From our point of view, much more successful as an acoustical barrier than the traditional sliding walls. But the room is organized into 3 sections, and then each section has 2 neighborhoods, and each of those neighborhoods has 7 teams. So there are, you can see 7 tables in each of the spaces. The center position, you'll see that in an image in a minute, is the teaching location. But when the room is completely open, it seats 250 students in 42 teams of 6. That was the largest single active learning classroom we've worked on to date. One thing in common that both this project and the UMKC Block School have in common is they're both built on raised floor. The Block School was built on a raised floor that handled both cabling distribution as well as air handling, so it provides the HVAC. This one was done because it was an existing building on a very shallow 3-inch raised floor just to handle IT cabling flexibility. So here you can see an image of that room and some of the groupings in the teams of 6. Each team has a 46-inch monitor at the end of their table. They have a microphone. That's a wireless collaboration system using Crestron's Air Media. It's an SBSI AV over IP distribution system. There are large 90-inch screens, 2 of them on each side, so there's 6 altogether on each end of each of the demising rooms. And you can see here some of the teams. So they take online courses. So the part of that 2-year development of the program was to create an online library of those courses they used to take in the lecture hall. Now they take those online the night before. They come in, they do a quick quiz, and then they work in teams to solve various kinds of different problems. The neighborhoods are organized by different departments of the School of Medicine, but the intention was to allow the students to work collaboratively with multiple disciplines within the School of Medicine, mimicking what they'll find in the real world. And it allowed the faculty, here's Dr. Stull, and he and I have presented this project a couple of times at SCUP, working with students, which he said, I never would have had the chance to do that one-on-one interaction if I hadn't been able to have this kind of room set up. Here's another one of the faculty. Now, I think they have something like 14 courses taught in this space during the year, second and third year med students all working together, and it's a very popular room. One of the other faculty who said, I thought I was going to need 2 TAs and a tech, but I found after using it that it was actually really quite simple, and easy to use, and now I teach it by myself. So his only problem was the acoustics are so good, it's hard for him to tell where the answer is coming from. So they've added some indicator lights on tops of each screen to show who's speaking. Here's another shot of the same, and you can see if you look right in the middle of the lower screen, multiple devices connected to the screens. Each of the screens has its own air media, so that the students have the flexibility of bringing in any device they want. And finally, I think one of the key issues in today's trends is developing simple user interface. Over the years, thank you to all the manufacturers who provide us with great interface tools. The complexity of interfaces, in my mind, has gotten greatly over complex. And we worked really hard with the faculty to develop something that was so simple that anyone could walk in without training and use. And so here you can see my model of a 4-button control system, and each one takes you to the thing you need to know in the next screen. So very simple. So those are the 2 projects I think are precursors to the rooms we see more consistently today across the country in almost every discipline. Again, AV over IP, simple user interface, wireless collaboration. I think those are the keys to success. And thanks. Oh, finally, I forgot about this one. Quote from Chris Faulkner, who's the faculty in charge of technology on the campus. And his point was that this team-based learning center gives them a facility that they can't replicate in any kind of a lecture space. And that the AV over IP collaboration technology has really changed the way they think about planning and implementing new classrooms across the campus. On to you, Emmett.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, I appreciate that. There just happens to be a virtual hand raise from our audience, and I thought this would be a perfect time to ask it. We have one person asking you to describe more what you mean by AV over IP and the benefits of it, why the schools are adopting it. Just spend a second on that.
Sure. The AV over IP, if you imagine all of the AV audio and video and control signals running as just other data packets on the network, there are now a number of companies making interfaces to allow that to happen. SBSI, Extron, Crestron. SBSI is associated with AMX for those of you who have an AMX platform on your campus. And that signal routing system just runs through standard switchers and lets you treat every device as a node on the network. Rather than having individual audio and video and separate control cabling running through the building and through a traditional, what we've been using for the last 20 years of matrix switching as the way to send device signals from one point to another. So radically simplifies the wiring, lowers the cost. We were able to, by going through an AV over IP solution for the UT Southwestern project, we calculated we probably saved 25% on the cost model if we compared to what we would have done with a traditional matrix switching model. Great.
Thanks, Craig. Before I turn it over to Emmett, I want to remind the rest of you, if you do have a question, you have the Q&A box. Fire us a question, and if we can't answer them while we're speaking, we will have time at the end to answer some of those. But now I'd like to turn it over to Emmett Frank at Dartmouth. Emmett, you've got the virtual clicker.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emmett Frank, and I am an academic technologist for Dartmouth College. I work with our classroom technology team to design audiovisual and technology solutions for our learning spaces across campus. I'd like to introduce you to Dartmouth briefly. Dartmouth is located in Hanover, New Hampshire. It's a 4-year private Ivy League liberal arts college that was founded in 1769. We have approximately 4,400 undergraduate and 2,100 graduate students. And there are more than 50 academic departments, graduate schools, that include arts and sciences, medicine, engineering, and business. Audiovisual on Dartmouth campus, kind of a big focus of us in classroom technology, is to provide a consistent and reliable experience across all of our learning spaces, especially since we have so many diverse departments sharing the same classrooms. Another big focus is identifying novel technology and introducing it to the Dartmouth community. And a final big focus, and probably the most important, is supporting our learning principles through technology in the classroom. So our learning principles, we're starting to see a lot of more active learning and kind of moving away from lecture-based learning or the didactic model of education. So kind of some of our principles we have are focused mainly around interaction between faculty and student. So the prominent ones that relate to technology that we usually try and align to is allowing students to actively engage with content and include a range of technologies that support multiple modes of teaching and learning. Another one is we want the technology to help provide features that permit students to work both individually and in collaboration with one another. And also be able to facilitate that communication interaction between students and faculty. Some of the key audiovisual technology that has helped us to do this is projectable surfaces with ultra short throw projectors, so we can project and write when the projectors are not on. Wireless gateways that allow collaboration for the students in multiple connections at the same time. Lecture capture tools, and as well comparative displays. So now I'm going to present a few classroom projects that used our design principles as a guide for what type of technology was chosen and what should be included. The first classroom that I'm going to show you is Carson 61. So this was an active learning focused group-based learning classroom that was designed. It originally started out as a computer lab that was then transformed into a 36-seat classroom. We have 7 team stations, all with discrete controls with the option to share content from each pod directly to the whole class or just to one another. Each team station has a wired connection for laptop and mobile devices, as well as its own wireless gateway, so students can collaborate with one another at each individual pod. Over the stations, we have speakers for program audio, so as the presenter is showing a video to the entire class, each team station can control the audio as they would like to. The technology in Carson 61 it really supports the group learning through the individual team stations, multiple writing services, and collaboration through that wireless gateway. The instructor is able to interact with each team station as well from an iPad or from a wall control so that they can send content directly from, for example, the red station to the orange station or from the main station to all of them. So that really puts the control of the content back onto the faculty member when they want to. Moving on from Carson 61, another project we worked on was Silsby 213. This was a learning space that was more of a traditional row and column that we transformed into a more flexible 35-seat classroom. What's kind of unique about this space, and it's probably the only one we have on campus, is there's actually 2 displays on opposing walls. So we're looking at just one display right now, but there's that same mirrored display on the other wall as well. So each display has its own set of discrete controls, wireless gateways, and as well we split the audio into 2 zones for the classroom. So in essence, the class could start off as presentation and then be split into 2 larger groups, with each group working with its own projection and audio. The technology really encouraged that transition between the presentation and group learning, and the furniture also helps the students form groups, or if they do want to just face one direction, they're able to do so pretty easily. Moving on from kind of our smaller size rooms, we start to look at our larger classrooms and how we're able to make that transition from kind of that lecture-based learning into more of a group-themed one. Fairchild 101 was the first time that we came up with a design with the intent to replicate it in other spaces on campus. Fairchild 101 was another row and column classroom that we transformed into a 52-seat classroom. And as you can see in the picture, the default state of it is in a group-oriented state, as well as privileging a lecture based usage, since we don't include seats on the front or the head of the table. So all the students, even if they're in a group, can still face to see the presenter or the content on the screen. The two projectors at the front of the room provide a comparative display feature with the intent that one of the screens could be used for the presenter's information for if they wanted to give instruction or if they had a group activity. And then the second larger screen could be used for collaboration. So there is a wireless gateway there, so the students are able to send their content up to the main screen. So as they're sharing out, they're able to connect one of the people or all of the people in the group up to the display to show their content. As well in the room, we do have microphones distributed as well as a camera at the front and back of the room for lecture capture and conferencing. So the faculty can bring in a guest presenter or they could capture their content to distribute to the students. The technology in Fairchild 101 supports that, again, that transition between traditional lecture and to group learning activities by providing that comparative display, as well as the recording, as I mentioned before, as well. So the nice thing about that recording, and I mentioned before, is that we identified lecture capture as a good solution, where you might not think lecture capture directly would benefit a group learning or an active learning type setting. What we found was really useful is it helped transitioning faculty that had a traditional way of teaching. They were able to record their content, but then they also had it for the next term or the next time they taught that class. They had a whole library of material that they could pull from if they wanted to use it as if they wanted to transition to more of a flipped classroom experience. So Steel 7 is kind of the next classroom up that I wanted to display. Steel 7 was modeled directly after Fairchild 101. So we took the same core design and principles that we used in designing that and applied it to a chemistry classroom. So this room, as you notice, the default set is actually a row and column with movable tables and chairs that we encourage to be reorganized into more of a group-based learning. So this one, like Fairchild 101, also has two projectors that can be put into a kind of comparative display. Cameras at the front and back, also has the ceiling microphones, as well as writing tablet at the podium. So the instructor can use that for digital annotation, or they can use it as a digital whiteboard, giving them the option that if they wanted to retain their content as they're writing, they could do so. So really working off of that success that we had in Fairchild 101, we were able to kind of reuse that same principle and provide the design somewhere else. The nice thing with that is that we have two very similar rooms that faculty can switch between, as well as one that's focused primarily at the group learning and another one that relies on the flexibility of that furniture to turn it into a group learning classroom. So some future opportunities. These are things that we're very excited about. One project we're working on is actually splitting an old auditorium into two levels with a group learning focus space on top and additional classrooms underneath. So this classroom is something that we're imagining, and it's great that Craig in his presentation showed the team-based learning center, because that's something very similar to what we're trying to do as well. So we're looking at doing that, and it really is a prime opportunity because the space, as we've designed and selected it, we're challenged with providing a singular front-of-room experience with a projector and display that's going to be large enough to accommodate the entire space. So we're really falling back to looking at how we can leverage audiovisual technology to distribute the content to every student and every team station that we have set up in the space. So we are looking at technology right now, and we're looking forward to picking out something. And it's always interesting looking at AV over IT or AV over IP as a possible solution to reduce costs. Another renovation that we're looking forward to is we're planning on renovating our Dart Row, which is three older buildings, and going through and applying a standard that we've developed for a smaller size classroom that really leverages wireless display, single source projection, but really simplified user controls that are really easy to replicate over a series of different rooms. So this way, I mentioned at the beginning, is that we have different departments that are put into that share multiple spaces. So it's very difficult to provide a consistent experience to every single one with each of their diverse needs. So we're really excited to be able to offer a range of classrooms that actually make up a majority of our distribution across campus. We're really excited to be able to standardize and have the same set of controls for each individual classroom. So as we move forward providing AV in these spaces, it's still really important, and we make that a kind of a priority to revisit our learning principles to make sure that our technology and design choices are aligning with those types of learning that the faculty and the students want in their classrooms, and making sure that the experience is consistent with many other spaces across campus. And thank you, and I look forward to answering some questions at the end.
Thanks, Emmett. We appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for firing off your questions. There are a lot coming in. We're going to save several of these for the end. There is one here that I think was directed at you, Emmett, for in your presentation. There's a question about the classrooms you showed. Do they have broadcast capability to other locations?
That is a great question. I'm going to give a very convoluted answer of yes and no. Some of the spaces where we have dedicated capture appliances, we're leveraging live stream features and event-based capabilities to share that kind of experience across room. Because we have the option of picking up the audience through ceiling microphones, handhelds, lavaliers, podium, you name it, that's kind of our primary way of sharing directly between the classrooms. It may not be the most streamlined way and not something I would advertise directly without having a support professional to help set it up and get that started. So yes and no, but that's how we're approaching kind of the broadcast.
Great. Okay, Aiden, I turn over the control to you. I look forward to hearing what you're doing at Florida State.
Thanks. So my name is Aiden Sizemore. I am the Director of Academic Technology and Systems here for the College of Business at Florida State University. We're located in Tallahassee, Florida. And I'm going to kind of talk specifically about our efforts with our spaces in two realms. First, where we kind of been, and then also where we're going presently, and then also future plans. So obviously, when we started looking at our classrooms, I wanted to provide thoughtful spaces with appropriate technology, but as my co-panelists have also touched on, we wanted to make sure that ease of use was a big thing. So we wanted to focus everything on that, and then we were looking at also the quality of the content that we were producing, because we not only wanted our on-campus students to have excellent technology, but we also wanted to provide as much as we could an excellent quality of content to our online students as well, because we have large, significant populations of both. And so we looked at three main areas, lecture capture being a big one, event capture being another one, and then also just the overall digital content creation process. So with that, we started updating our traditional learning spaces. And when we were looking at our classrooms, we noticed that we hadn't done a lot with them since our initial switch to lecture capture, which we started about 6 years ago. And we just had the traditional setup, single mounted cameras, a lapel mic for the instructor, a traditional podium system, not really an active learning space, more of the traditional lecture pedagogy, and we used Tegrity as our solution for lecture capture. But then we went through and realized that active learning was really important in changing the way that our instructors were teaching in the classroom, and we really wanted to enhance that effort that they were making in their pedagogy to deliver their instruction. So we started doing updates, and this is one of our more traditional setup classrooms with the U-shape, but we started adding more projectors. So no matter where you were sitting in the classroom, there was a really good view for those that were sitting in the classroom. We added additional cameras in the classrooms, in the back of the classrooms. Unfortunately, I apologize, you can't see them in this picture, so that when we were capturing digital content, you would have multiple views to switch from. And so when we were transferring that content for a different audience, we would have multiple views to work with in post-production. We also wanted to make sure that we were supporting the many awesome guest speakers that were coming into our classroom, and giving them multiple microphones so they weren't having to pass it around. And then in that, when we started looking at guest speakers, we started looking at virtual guest speakers. We host quite a few webinars with virtual guest speakers from industries all over the country and the world. So looking at ways to make those interactive, and the big one we came up with was using beamforming microphones so that they could easily hear our students asking questions, and students would engage and get together with the guest lecturers that were coming in virtually. And then also adding cameras for audience view. So one of the big things that initially was a problem in our classrooms was our students could see the speaker couldn't see the students. So there was a kind of a block that was happening. And so adding in something as simple as extra additional cameras in the front of the room added in that engagement presence for both the speakers and the students. And then we started looking at some of our less traditional spaces. So the first one was our conference spaces. So we host many events, whether it's board meetings for the multiple boards, student-generated events, specialized guest speakers for our different disciplines. So our main board conference space we looked at to do an increase in the original AV that was in that room. So again, it was similar to what you saw in our classrooms. We had a single mounted cam, a small in-room audio system with 3 mics. And so we decided it's time to update that. We need to do things. So we put in a multi-camera system with a 6 ceiling array of different cameras, and at different levels also. Some were wall mounted, some were ceiling mounted, again, giving us that flexibility. And we also added in multiple audio and video access points throughout the room so that if we had different industry people bringing their own PR teams in or bringing their own AV teams in, they would be able to hook into those in-room systems and get quality content to use for their own purposes as well. We did update to laser projectors, and then we also, the most important thing I think that we did, and we always get commentary on, is we integrated a large confidence monitor into our podium. And as simple as a thing that is, it's made one of the biggest impacts, and people are always like, oh, it's right here, I can see it, I don't have to turn around and look at these screens behind me, I know what's on them. And it's small change, but it made a huge difference. So when we were looking at moving forward in these spaces, we decided we needed to kind of up the ante a bit and create new spaces that worked really well for learning and for events and things of that. So we are currently in the process of redoing our AV plan for the future because we're in the process of building a brand new College of Business building from the ground up. And so that's been a really interesting process because we've thought about how we've been implementing certain things within our current building and dealing with the infrastructure of that and the changes, the rapid changes in technology and how that affects us as we try to, in a way, try to future-proof so that we can continue evolving as our students evolve and technology evolves with them. So again, looking at making sure that all of our rooms are consistent, they have multi-camera systems, but they're based on the size of that environment that they're in and provide multiple views for different lecture and event capture. We're reviewing microphone use and placement. So we're investing in beam array mics right now, but is that the right place for us, you know, moving down the line? We've actually gone away from ceiling mics because we're located relatively close to highly traversed areas that we were getting too much outside noise and it was causing issues in our final products. We're also looking at redesigning our podium. So we want to make sure that our instructors are not blocked from our students, and that there's a flexibility for them to utilize the latest active learning techniques with the latest technology. And part of that is reducing wires in general. So providing wireless casting technology, whether that be for small group work or for the entire class as a whole, providing additional monitors to act as confidence monitors and group work monitors, similar to what Emmett showed you they're doing at Dartmouth. And then also controllable lighting and room systems to not only promote the optimal environment for capture, but also so that students can easily book things on the fly. If there's, a space that they want to use that's available, they can go there and they can use it. And so with that, we're kind of looking at our student collaboration spaces were the big thing. So we're in an old building right now. It was built in the 50s and we did an addition in the 80s, and we didn't have a lot of open collaboration space for our students. So the first thing we did in this building is we commandeered a room and said, we're going to do a test case for a student collaboration lab and see how much use it gets. I can tell you it is booked every minute of every day by students. They absolutely love it. And so what we did in this room was we gave them a couple different technologies. We gave them a 70-inch presentation screen for them to come in and practice when they're doing case competitions, when they're doing presentations. When they're doing virtual job interviews, they can use this room to come in and do those interviews in a place where they have kind of a polished look behind them and they're not having to do it from their apartments or from somewhere randomly on campus. And then with that, we also invested in Steelcase's technology using their VGA pucks with a 2-screen array that you can actually split screen into up to 4 devices to be connected. And so the students use this constantly for projects and, again, team group work. And then the other space that we retrofitted was what we're calling our doctoral seminar room, which is really, in a way, our classrooms of the future. So as you can see in this shot, we have multiple screens staged throughout the room. There's actually 4 screens staged throughout the room. There are little control panels that the students can control the screens individually, or they can work cohesively as a whole screen system for the room, as you can see what's displayed here. And then we have a mobile podium. So again, making it flexible for instructors to be able to move about the room if they need technology to come with them to a certain extent, and we're using the Crestron interface with this to provide that. This has completely changed how our doctoral students work and also how our faculty work. There are a lot of faculty groups that come into this space and utilize this space regularly for seminars and even for small conference events because of the technology that is in this room that allows them that flexibility. So it's really expanded our capabilities here. And then, we're getting to a point where we are thinking about those future rooms in Legacy Hall. These previous rooms were kind of test fits for that. So the biggest thing we're doing is, I said, we had limited space now. We're expanding the amount of space for our students and faculty for collaboration and breakout by over 500% of what we have now, which is obviously a significant investment. And then again, consistency. Consistency and collaboration are the 2 biggest things that we constantly stress, because we can put as much tech as we want into these rooms, but if the faculty and the students don't come in and readily know how to use these rooms or can't figure it out quickly, then that technology becomes useless. So making sure that it's very apparent that as few buttons as possible, that the UIs are clear and concise, and then also providing training opportunities for both students, faculty, and staff so that everyone feels comfortable and can learn at their own pace. It's really, really important. And then a big thing for these is we're integrating a scheduling system for on-demand booking. So there will be screens outside of these rooms where students can go up, and if it's available, they can send a request to book the room immediately, and it will be approved, and they will be given access to that room. So using the swipe card and proximity sensor to do that is kind of the next steps for us as we move forward to Legacy Hall. We also have some very specialized teaching spaces in our building currently. The first one, we call this the War Room. It is for our real estate research program. And again, here we have this collaborative area for the real estate department, faculty, and students to meet and collaborate. And it doubles, again, as a small space for seminars. In this space, you see we've got the two 70-inch screens. They do have a mounted camera in this room as well. And they also have full conferencing capabilities in this classroom. So a lot of times you'll see these smaller 10-person classes meeting for our more advanced students, and then for our master's and graduate level students, they will come into this space with instructors and hold classes using the technology in this room. The other big one, and it's one that is common to all business schools, is we have a trading room. And so in our trading room, you can obviously see we have the classic ticker tape, but we also have 10 dedicated Bloomberg terminals for students to train and use for Bloomberg education and certification. And we also we use 70-inch screens in this space to deliver presentations. And that's one thing you'll notice is kind of happening with all these newer retrofits of these spaces. We're really moving away from projectors and going to large-scale screens in order to really make sure that students are getting a clear picture. And then our next space we have is all about digital content creation. So for students and faculty, we have two studio spaces. The first one you can see here is our traditional studio. And this is something where we have a dedicated production team that plans, creates, and edits content. We recently invested in updating this room, so we have updated cameras that we can shoot in 4K if we need to. We're using LED lighting arrays. We're using the Sennheiser mics. You see the green screen there. It's the light ring with the chromat backdrop. And you see on the side of this, we used to use a smartboard. We don't use the smartboard anymore. It's really not great to capture digital content on. We had a lot of lighting issues with that. So we moved to the chromat backdrop and get a beautiful final product. And then we also, as you can kind of see from the screen that's facing you, we're using a TriCaster Mini so that we utilize these virtual sets to create different looks for our content to make sure that everything stays fresh and engaging for our students when we're putting it out there for them. So that also has expanded our ability to broadcast, so we can broadcast from this space. And we have the ability to host live events out of this space, which is great for bringing in guest speakers to send out to our classrooms and to students who might not be here with us on campus. And we have the ability, obviously, to record those events as well. The next space that we also use that we have as a studio space available is our One Button Studio. And so this is using the PSU One Button Studio app. We took what they had in their equipment list and we kind of souped it up so that it was the same equipment that you see in our traditional studio in terms of lighting and microphone and camera. And then we use really big screens to make sure everyone can see everything. And again, we wanted to make sure that we maintained consistency. So students, when they were viewing content that our faculty created or that their fellow peers created, it looked the same whether it was in the traditional studio or when in the One Button Studio. The only difference is the One Button Studio, we don't have a TriCaster, and so they don't get the virtual set option. They're doing the traditional weathermanning option. But again, this allowed a little more DIY for our students and for our faculty when they're working on projects and lectures. They can come in, they can record, and they can, see everything that they're doing, and then they get a video file that they can then edit on their own, or again, our media production team will come in and do that editing for them. So it's been a really great expansion. We are in the future moving to adding additional One Button Studios and looking at ways to make them more functional using the One Button Studio Plus model. We are investing heavily in AV over IP so that in Legacy Hall, our studio, our auditorium, our multi-purpose spaces, seminar rooms, and classrooms can be centrally run so that we don't have to worry about cabling. However, one thing I will say in building this building, the one big thing that we've been adamant about is whether we're putting the cabling in or not, we are putting conduit everywhere humanly possible to, again, try to future-proof as much as possible. We don't know where technology is going to be in the next 5 years necessarily, or even in the next year, but we want to make sure that we are able to, again, flex with the times as it changes. And then constantly just reevaluating our spaces and as technology changes to kind of make those updates and see what works best for our faculty and for our students. And really the big thing is the impact of these focuses we've had. We are increasing demand and usage of collaboration tools. We're increasing our engagement and making a huge impact in how our students learn. And that, to me, is the biggest takeaway.
Right. Well, thanks, Aiden. Appreciate it. We have just a little bit of time here at the end. Lots of questions came in. I would say that a lot of these questions revolve around cost, future-proofing, and faculty acceptance. So let me do this real quick. Aiden and Emmett, on the ground at your universities, how do you reach out and get faculty buy-in for using these types of rooms or these types of technologies? Either one of you can grab that if you want.
Sure, I'll take a stab real quick.
Oh, all right, go for it.
You want to go? Okay. So we provide a lot of workshops. So our college, we have my team, which is our in-house academic unit. We have an external team that the university provides. So doing one-on-one workshops, groups workshops to give them opportunities. We also do a lot of open houses with technology. So when we debut a new technology, we'll put out a few days where we close off the room to any classes or anything like that, or it's not in use, and have the faculty and students stop by and show them the technology and what they can do with it. So that's a big way to get faculty buy-in. And then also, once we have a faculty that really leaches onto the technology, we really ask them to talk to their peers within the college and talk about their experience with the technology. That to me has been the best way to get buy-in is relying on that peer-to-peer network with faculty.
Emmett, do you want to add on there?
So I'll mimic a little bit what Aiden was saying, and we do something a little bit similar, but we also approach it from a needs assessment analysis side. Is that we do inventory, we do a classroom survey once every 2 years that's cast out to all of our faculty to gauge kind of the direction and what their needs are. We then try and filter the results through our kind of our DCAL Center, which is the Dartmouth Center for the Advancement of Learning. And then we also have a partner group on campus, which is Learning Design and Technology, that meets one-on-one with faculty and holds workshops to help faculty in whichever way they can, whether it's introducing the technology, the learning practices, or the course design itself. So I would say it's that same kind of thing as when we look at it from a needs assessment point to make sure we're building the spaces that the faculty and students want, and then we as well set up programs to help people that are interested in transitioning from a lecture-based style to more of an active learning.
Right. Craig, several of the questions from the audience revolve around cost. Obviously, we're talking about new technology here, and what is the sort of the cost equation here? Is it scalable for small, medium, large spaces? You must deal with clients on a regular basis who are sensitive to the cost of new technology. What is your perspective there?
Well, absolutely. It is probably the most asked question in all of our planning efforts is where do we spend our money wisely? And we always say there's three answers to that. It's infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. And I can't remember if it was Aiden or Emmett that said it, but planning for a robust way to get cabling around the building at the planning stage, or to look at new ways like AV over IP to simplify signal distribution in existing buildings, are ways to future-proof the building. The nodes on the network, the screens and the devices themselves will change we used to say 3 years, now I'm thinking it might be 18 months. So a term I learned from working with Apple Computer several years ago was make the responsible minimum investment in technology. Only buy things you can support, and that support, in this case, your pedagogical needs. While all the tech is fun to look at and might be fun to play with, until you have a use case, I would plan for infrastructure, but not buy what we can't use now.
Great. Listen, I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. We've reached the end of our hour. I think that also hit on some of the questions around future-proofing. Make sure that you invest in enough infrastructure to support whatever technologies you might need in the future. I want to thank Craig and Emmett and Aidan for joining us today. Thank you all for joining us. Seriously, AVIXA, we really want to be talking to people in higher education who are interested in using more technology in their spaces. So my personal email address is on the screen. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about what we talked about here, about AVIXA and our members and ways that we can help your universities really utilize technology to create great learning and teaching experiences. Thank you all for joining us. Recordings will be available after the fact, and join us at avixa.org/higheredav to see other examples of great installations. Thanks, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.